Is it okay for the government to make people pay a tax for the right to vote? You don't have to pay a tax to have freedom of speech or freedom of religion, so why should you pay a tax to vote? Taxes on the right to vote are no longer allowed, thanks to the 24th Amendment ratified in 1964. One of the earliest conditions for voting was owning property. In 1787, when the framers wrote the Constitution, white men without property could not vote. Many of the framers, like John Adams, thought a man who did not own property was too dependent on the wishes of other people, like his landlord. Benjamin Franklin, one of the framers who was very smart and very funny, made a joke about that idea. He told a story about a man and his donkey, which was worth $50, so the man had enough property to vote. But then the donkey died and the man could not vote. So who really had the right to vote, Franklin asked? The man or the donkey? Eventually, the states allowed white men without property to vote. And after the Civil War ended in 1865 and the 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870, black men had the right to vote. But Southern states used a poll tax, or tax on voting, to keep African American men from voting. Many of them were formerly enslaved people who barely had enough to eat, much less money to pay a tax to vote. At first, poor white men could still vote, because many states included a grandfather clause, an exception in the law that said if your father or grandfather could vote before 1870, you could vote too. Of course, for most black men, their grandfathers were enslaved then and couldn't vote. The Supreme Court later struck down the grandfather clause, but the poll tax itself still stood. Then, the poll tax affected both poor whites and poor blacks alike. In 1937, the Supreme Court upheld the poll tax as constitutional. In 1962, when Congress set out to change the poll tax, it found that the tax was not different based on race. However, the poll tax did put an extra burden on poor people just to exercise their right to vote. Congress passed the 24th Amendment in 1962, which was approved by the states in 1964. Yet the 24th Amendment only applied to federal elections. In 1966, the Supreme Court changed its mind on poll taxes and struck down their use in state elections too. The court said that wealth should not be used as a qualification for voting. Besides the poll tax, what other practices can limit a person's right to vote?